February 14th, Valentine's Day City Council meeting. Thank you for joining us in this remote meeting format, which enables the City Council to meet, hear from the community, and take care of business while keeping everyone safe. Anyone wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by following the access instructions listed for this meeting on the city's public webcast and meeting materials web page. Tonight's meeting will include a public forum. If you wish to participate and haven't already done so, please raise your virtual hand now to join the speaker's queue in one of two ways. For those viewing the meeting on a computer or other device, click once on the hand icon. For those listening to the meeting on a phone, press *9. We will continue raising hands until 7:35. The meeting moderator will disallow any requests to speak that are made after the deadline. You will have 2.5 minutes to speak. As a reminder, speakers have the option of turning on your video when you are called on to provide testimony. As your turn is announced, the meeting moderator will temporarily promote you to panelist status, and you can unmute and turn on your video if you wish. And I encourage you to use this increased access in a responsible way. Our intent is simply to be able to see each other's faces as testimony is given. And finally, thank you for taking the time this evening, for your patience, for your willingness to continue to use this virtual format. As always, feel free to contact any one of us individually or together via email or voicemail if there is testimony you were not able to provide or wish to get to us in a different manner. And now I'll formally open this meeting with a land acknowledgement. Since time immemorial, the Kalapuya people have been the indigenous stewards to our region, building dynamic communities, maintaining balance with wildlife, and enacting sustainable land practices. Following treaties between 1851 and 1855, Kalapuya people were dispossessed of their indigenous homeland by the United States government and forcibly removed to the Coast Reservation in Western Oregon. The city of Eugene is built within the traditional homelands known as Kalapuya Ilahi. Kalapuya descendants are citizens of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians of Oregon, and continue to make contributions in our communities here and across the lands. We acknowledge the inherent political sovereignty of the 9 federally recognized tribal nations in the state of Oregon and all American Indian, Native, Alaska Native people who live here. Thank you again for joining us. And with that, our first agenda item are committee reports and items of interest. And I see that Councilor Surratt is ready with a hand raised, and Councilor Groves. So take it away, Councilor Surratt.
Thank you, Mayor. So first, just in keeping with the agreement we made with Council for our Intergovernmental Relations Committee, touching base, you should have received a written update from Ethan Nelson on the status of our current priorities in the legislature. Keep in mind, it's a short session and things move very quickly. So staff is working at a extra hectic pace. One thing that to note is, so the city has put in a request for $5 million to support our homelessness services, you know, our new safe sleep sites, sanitation, and support services. And we have ended up working in coalition with other cities for a kind of statewide allocation, recognizing that this is a crisis that is impacting most cities across the state. So several larger mid-sized cities such as ourselves, Salem, Portland, Bend, and several others have joined together to make this request in combination with one another to hopefully strengthen our voice. The second thing I wanted to bring up is Councilor Groves and I, had a meeting with the advocates from Beyond Toxics, partly to catch up on things with J.H. Baxter, but also to think more deeply about an idea that Mayor Vinnis has brought forward, I think, to probably a number of you in conversation and the city manager, about the idea of creating a public health overlay for certain parts of the city that are particularly impacted by industry or other potentially harmful activities in terms of health. And we are, one or both of us are considering and planning to bring forward a motion at our meeting on the 28th to have a work session on this concept. So just wanted to give you a heads up about that. And, in case you guys have further questions or concerns, wanted to just kind of broadcast that we were planning to bring that idea forward as a motion to have a work session. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Groves, and then Councillor Semple.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to start by thanking Councillor Syrat for bringing this important issue forward. And I will be either making or supporting the motion to move the health overlay zone forward. I think it's important for the protection of the vulnerable parts of our community. And, it's one of the most important responsibilities we have is protecting the people who live, work, and even pass through here. So I think Beyond Toxics has done some really good work around this as well. And I appreciate the mayor raising this issue. And again, I will be supporting it. The second thing I wanted to bring forward was I had the opportunity to attend the Berkeley Park reopening this Saturday, which is located at 14th and Wilson Street. I think our Parks and Open Space staff did an absolute phenomenal job of building infrastructure into this park. It was based on neighborhood input into what they wanted to see designed, and it was part of our Parks Bond that is going towards enhancing our parklands. And I truly believe our parks are one of the crown jewels of our city. And I love our larger parks and like to enjoy using them. But I think sometimes these neighborhood parks really provide day-to-day opportunities for people in their neighborhoods to be able to get out and recreate, for the kids to play in and be active. And I think they're just an incredible resource that we have here in Eugene. So I wanted to acknowledge that. The second thing, I had an opportunity to go down to Everyone Village today, which is one of our safe sleep sites, and met with Pastor Gabe Pisowicz and Heather Salicki, who are running that operation. I would really encourage, if you have time, also key staff to make the time just to go down and see what is being done. It's a different way of operating. I truly believe it's going to help move people to a better place and not just warehouse. It's definitely getting people off the streets. It's a 3.5 acre site that has been donated by Arlen Rexius for up to 5 years, and then they'll revisit it at that time. And of the 3.5 acres, they're basically using 1 acre right now. There's still 2.5 acres that could easily be developed. And if you go down and take a look at it and let Pastor Gabe and Heather show you around, they can demonstrate and create a vision for you of what this could be. And I actually think it's pretty exciting. And I think it's a good location for this as well. So I just wanted to encourage my colleagues to look this up. I would be happy to make arrangements for you or even meet you down there to have the discussion. And same thing to city staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Semple, and then Councillor Keating.
Thank you. I have some committee reports. The Home Consortium Governing Board met this week and approved the home funding for PULP 2.0, the Dev Northwest project for people aging out of foster care. They're getting $550,000 of home funds and another 96 from the city. And then combined with 580,000 and 468,000 from Springfield, there'll be $1,048,766 for the Coleman, which is being done by Homes for Good. It's across from sponsors, 50 some units that will be for formerly incarcerated people. So these are great projects. We were really excited to be endorsing them. Coming up will be the ARP funding. Eugene Springfield's getting $4,728,000. And the governing board will decide that funding also, starting with a needs assessment, developing priority strategies, and an allocation plan. So that's something exciting to look forward to. We also had, so the Housing Policy Board met. We talked about some of those same things and also had a report from CETA, the Springfield Eugene Tenants Association. Last month, they had a record 174 calls. Most of them are about getting rent assistance, which is partly why they were so high, but also habitability and evictions. So they're performing some really important work. The Mackenzie Watershed Council met last week, and we had representatives from EWEB and the Forest Service to explain the work on floodplain restoration. This has been going on for years, but even more with after the fire, that what happens is that the river gets really deep, the channel, and it's bad for fish. So by putting trees into the channels, it breaks them up and we get much more fish habitat. So this is more projects. It's great. The agencies up there are doing so much work. Cordwood from the burnt trees are being delivered. And quickly, on a little bit more personal note, after 17 years, I finally bought a new sidewalk from my corner lot, and Lane County Public, I used to work for them. City of Eugene Public Works did it. I'm gonna go just a little bit over. Phenomenal, beautiful work. I'm so proud to be associated with them. Really great people to work for. So run down and enjoy my sidewalk. It's open to the public now. Thanks.
Congratulations. Councilor Keating and then Councilor Ye.
Thanks, Mayor. Right out of the gate, I want to thank the Public Works team who were wholly responsive in this last week to issues with the bubbler. Some of the storm drains in our neighborhood were overflowing, and really just want to thank them for their professionalism and taking care of the neighborhood. Mayor, the Lane Regional Air Protection Agency, which you have appointed me to be council's liaison to, has announced an expansion of our Citizen Advisory Committee. The Citizen Advisory Committee, CAC, can have up to 15 persons. Right now, there are 9. Technically, there are 8 because there was one professional vacancy, but there's an opportunity for citizens to apply up to 15 persons. So that would add 6 seats to El Rapa's Lane Regional Air Protection Agency Citizen Advisory Committee. You can go to lrapa.org. L is in Lincoln, RAPA.org, lrapa.org, to learn more about how to apply to be a citizen member of the Citizen Advisory Committee. Tomorrow night at 5:30, the Human Rights Commission meets online, a virtual meeting at 5:30 p.m. Next week, Monday, February 21st, the Human Services Commission will meet at noon. And at the risk of sounding like a curmudgeon of a counselor, I'm going to ask neighbors with 4-legged friends in their family to do 3 things. But first, did you know City Code Section 4.465, revolving around dog waste matter, makes it clear that except for seeing eye dogs, it is unlawful to deposit solid waste matter on any improved property other than that of the dog owner. City code reads, quote, "It shall be a defense to this section if the dog owner immediately removes the solid waste." This should be common sense for practically everyone in Eugene, but sadly, on nearly every one of my daily walks with Vegas, we notice, and I pick up, the business left behind by a seemingly unaware dog owner or loose pooch. There are folks among us, Mayor, presumably well-intentioned persons, who also routinely leave their dogs' business baggies behind as they apparently finish their walk. Not cool. And of course, there's a cohort of pet owners who rationalize depositing their dog's business in the nearest private receptacle. Also an unwelcome action. So neighbors, please immediately pick up after your pup. Please pack your dog's business baggies all along your walk. And please deposit your pet's business in your trash can, not a random neighbor's receptacle. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Ye and Councillor Evans.
Thank you. It's hard to follow those words of wisdom from Councillor Keating, but I appreciate that. So I have two commissions to report on. First, Police Commission, we met. Our main topic was the Eugene 4J Student Wellness and School Safety Team, which joined us and talked about their program and how and in what ways they work with EPD to get the work done that they need to get done. Anyone who's interested in that can watch the recording on the Police Commission webpage. Our next meeting is March 10th at 5:30 p.m. And our main topic currently tentatively planned will be on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So if that's something that interests you, you might want to check out that meeting. The Metropolitan Wastewater Management Commission met recently. We had an audit done, which we got a clean report on, which was very encouraging and very routine. So that was great to hear. The staff is working very hard right now on our permit with the DEQ, which is the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. I'm not using acronyms. I want to get credit for that. And so more information will be out into the community as that moves along, and there'll be opportunities for comment from the community as well before the permit is finalized. So people can watch for that if that is something that interests them. And that is it.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
There's an issue that I think that we're going to be facing, or we're already facing right now, and we'll be facing much more in the near future with regard to affordable housing. And what I'm talking about, I think I will put forward as a work session poll, and that is, how do we retain the affordable housing that we already have? We have people who are coming into our community who are buying up housing and tracts of housing that have been affordable for years. And now they're looking to convert them and to upscale them to market rate housing. I don't have really a problem with that, except for the fact that we don't have enough affordable housing as it is now. And so I think that we need to have a conversation about how we protect the number of affordable houses that we have and affordable units that we have in this community, so that we don't price people out of their homes and the places that they live. There is a development in my ward that is facing that kind of situation. I don't want to get into the details of it at this point, but I think that we really need to have that conversation, because we are losing affordable housing that has already been there, that has existed. And what we need to do is improve that housing and not pass that cost on to the renters or the owners of those properties. So I will be putting that out as a work session poll, because we really, really have a chronic affordable housing shortage issue.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to piggyback on comments that three councilors made, and I think I'll go in the reverse order. And so we'll just say, Councilor Evans, you did all approve the housing implementation pipeline, and that included an anti-displacement action. So I think that is on council's agenda. And so it could be a work session, but just to remind you that you have approved a policy that incorporates that, and that we also will be having a, of course, we're going to have another meeting about renter protection. So thank you for bringing that forward. And just a reminder that it's already, it's in the pipeline, literally. Second, I wanted to mention, sort of piggyback on Emily's comments about the Home Consortium Board, because this is sort of significant for people to hear that in addition to the American Rescue Plan funds that we received as a city, the Home Consortium received its own funds. So this is on top of what we normally receive, and it's $4.7 million of funds. And the process that the Home Consortium Board will follow, those funds can be used for rental housing in the normal way that we use home funds, but it also can be used to develop non-congregate shelters. It can be used to support supportive services for housing. It can be used to provide operating assistance and tenant rental assistance. So it is much broader than the funds that usually come through the Home Consortium. So it does really add to what we're able to do as a community. And it's a significant boon. So we're going through a process for that, an outreach process, and determine, get more community feedback into how to use that. And finally, with my last choking breath, I just want to piggyback on Matt's comments, because I have a neighbor who has a little sign in his lawn that says, "There is no such thing as a poop fairy. Please pick up your own poop." So I would highly recommend a distribution of such signs. Thank you. And if we're done there with committee reports and items of interest, I believe we are ready for a vote on consent calendar.
Sure, Mayor. The city manager had.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did see Sarah's hand up. I apologize. Manager, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you. I just, not to send you another email, we've been really trying hard not to schedule you for action or even kind of work session items on Monday nights, and have also been trying to really hold
when you have 15 seconds to complete your comments. The red light indicates the end of the 2.5 minutes. For those who have connected to the meeting via phone and don't have the benefit of seeing the timer, please be aware that your microphone will be muted at the 2.5 minute mark. And it looks like we have 23 hands raised. So just a reminder that we allot 90 minutes for the public forum. And if you're able to use fewer than your 2.5 minutes, it leaves room to make sure everyone can testify, but we should be able to get through the list tonight. And with that, Naya, I guess you're in charge. I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So first, we're going to start with Breach Collective, followed by Catherine Dunn.
Guess that's me. Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Mayor and Fitness and City Council, thank you for the opportunity to testify this evening. My name is Eme Akote-Oyakan. I'm a climate justice strategist with the Breach Collective, and I live in City of Eugene, Ward 3. I'm calling this evening to testify first in support of the city's upcoming work session in April to explore the code changes necessary to ensure that beginning on January 1st, 2023, all of our new commercial, residential, and industrial buildings will promote the health of their future inhabitants as well as the health of the planet by being 100% electric. Second, I'd like to share some insights from a listening session that I hosted last week, Thursday, for communities of color in Lane County. A majority of the attendants were renters, groups that face particular disadvantages in the transition to electric homes and appliances. Affordable and accessible housing was identified as the most pressing concern for our attendees, and it's clear that we need to be thinking about how a just transition to clean energy needs to be a just transition for housing as well. I support the tenant protections proposed by the city and continue to urge you to think critically about how energy and housing justice are intersectional in order to ensure that the draft roadmap for electrification for our building stock due this summer addresses the needs of renters, low-income communities, and communities of color. I think the public health overlay zone could be an important tool used to spatially prioritize communities for the purposes of electrification. Finally, to let you know that dedicated staff with a background in sustainability science, as well as equity and justice concerns for historically marginalized groups, is needed to carry this work forward and to demonstrate to community members that you are committed to addressing both climate change and historic systems of oppression. So I urge you to use such criteria as you recruit new staff to continue the work of our previous sustainability manager. Thank you for this opportunity to testify this evening, and I hope you have a nice Valentine's Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Eme. Next is Catherine Dunn, followed by Michael Havlick.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. Happy Valentine's Day to you all and all the listeners today too. I'm Catherine Dunn with Ward 5. Tonight I'm focusing on the proposed renter protections. And the council has asked us for specific feedback about the ordinances, and some specifics have been provided for many of the ordinances. And I think we're still trying to understand what the actual problems are that you're trying to solve. So tonight I have a few questions to ask that I'd like to see if we could get answered either at the end of the meeting or in the next few days so we can gain some clarity. First, what is the council specifically trying to accomplish by the proposed ordinances? What is the specific problem or problems that you'd like to solve? How was it determined that these are actual problems? What is was there research or data that you have to validate these are true problems in our community and that they are prevalent? We'd like to know what those data points are, where the research is that you're looking at. Or if you're not looking at research, then let us know that. Number 3, are the proposed ordinances intended to solve tenant complaints that we've been hearing? If so, are you relying solely on the renter's experience survey, or do you have other data or information you're looking at? Number 4, are the ordinances designed to address equity and access issues the council has mentioned at meetings? If so, could you please define what the council means by equity and access in the context of landlord-tenant relations? And number 5, are the ordinances simply considered because other communities like Portland have implemented similar ordinances? And what data do you have to show that these ordinances are needed in Eugene? I want you to know that Eugene rental owners are members of the community of Eugene and Springfield and surrounding area, and we want to live in a healthy community. If we have valid problems that need to be addressed, we'd like to participate in solutions. What we don't want, though, is for the council to create policies based on unverified complaints. We want research to be available, data to be used. We also want to ensure that policies don't have unintended consequences. I know you want that too. We want a balanced approach. Landlords and tenants should be on the same team. As I've said before, landlords have homes to rent and tenants want them to rent. So we should be on the same team. It should be a win-win, and we don't want to have a divide. We want to have good relationships with our tenants, and we want to feel.
Thank you, Catherine. Your time has concluded. Next is Michael Havlick, followed by Jennifer Wincoop.
Good evening and happy Valentine's Day, Mayor Venice and members of the council. My name is Michael Havlick, Deputy Executive Director for Multifamily Northwest. Multifamily Northwest is the largest association of rental housing providers and suppliers in Oregon, representing 13,500 rental units in the city of Eugene alone. First, I'd like to say how pleased I am to see the upcoming March 2nd training entitled Fair Housing, Know Your Rights. This was arranged by your education and outreach team and will feature the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. Offering training to renters and housing providers is critical, particularly for owners who are not affiliated with one of the Oregon's rental housing associations. The new state housing laws pertaining to individualized assessments of applications with current criminal convictions, those are new and not well understood yet, and I think that this will help. Our industry has been beset with many changes to housing laws, and more are under consideration during the short session, which is currently underway. It is in this context that I would like to express our continued opposition to the housing ordinances that you are considering for the city of Eugene. We reviewed the last 12 months of data available from the CETA hotline. Inquiries are broken down into the following categories: evictions, late rent, rental assistance, landlord entry, neighbor issues, rental increases, fees and deposits, habitability, rental agreements, applications and screening, and reasonable accommodation. All of these topics have well-established law at the state level. Having a thorough understanding of what is currently in place and how it operates should be the first step before embarking on something unproven and that will have result in unfavorable outcomes. It would be helpful when you're briefed on these issues to receive a thorough context about whether existing law was followed or not. Our conclusion is that the CETA hotline issues are not really resolved by the proposed ordinances. Today, I read that the city staff are looking at potential impacts, feasibility, and resources that would be needed for implementation of the ordinances. Please consider our association as a resource to you. Because this is our business, we would like to be part of the discussions in a meaningful way. We have access to data and support from the National Apartment Association as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michael. Next is Jennifer Wincoop, followed by Paul Fenley.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Jennifer Wincoop, and I'm a portfolio manager with Income Property Management. I appreciate being able to speak with you tonight regarding the proposed new housing ordinances. We manage properties in all the wards except number 6. As I said last month, overall, I think these types of ordinances need to be done on the state level and not on a city-by-city basis. But tonight I wanted to touch base on the ordinance that would require landlords to distribute, together with any written rental agreement, an educational document describing Senate Bill 608 with regard to terminations. First off, Senate Bill 608 is mainly about rent control and qualified landlords' reason for termination. Providing this information may cause the renters more confusion and not be a real benefit. While we agree that tenants should be made aware of their rights, we don't think this is how we should be educating them effectively. With the possibility of bills being changed, trying to keep the documents updated to current rules will become a burden. I think we as housing providers have no issue providing them a link if the city wanted to put a website together that would have all the educational information on Senate Bill 608 and their rights. This website would also be a greener option than having us print even more paperwork than we currently do at the move-in. Thank you for listening and have a good night.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next is Paul Fenley, followed by Joanne Shatola. Paul, please unmute.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Paul Finley. I live in Ward 5. I have single-family rental homes in Wards 2, 4, 6, and 7. I oppose all the renter protection ordinances being considered, and I'm offended by the statements made by many renter advocates and seemingly adopted by some city council members. Extremely offended. I'm not rich. I've worked hard all my life, starting at age 16. In 1972, I was putting up steel buildings. In my 20s, early 80s, I taught myself computer programming and published an accounting system, even after I broke my neck in an office chair accident, which I'm still suffering from. My accounting system was written for DOS, so when Windows came out in '94, it became obsolete. So I cut my losses and partnered in a marketing firm to help small businesses. I, like every entrepreneur, got to work early, stayed late to build a successful business. I chose to invest my hard-earned savings in properties as I didn't do well in the stock market. Every time I saved a down payment, I put it down on a single-family residence. When I first started, the rent barely covered the mortgages. As rents have increased over the last few years, I've realized some cash flow. Finally, thank God, because holding property is expensive. It may seem like landlords make a lot of money, but looks are deceiving. It costs a lot to maintain property. I have to set aside money for roof replacement, exterior painting, fence and plumbing repairs, tree pruning, etc. And then there are unforeseen expenses usually caused by renters. And now you're going to ask me to pay money to renters for relocation costs. In my experience, renters tell me my properties are the nicest they've seen, and they agree to the terms of the lease. Some are great renters and some are not. They move into a sparkling clean home with new paint, carpet, and blinds. And when they leave, I find a dirty home, carpet destroyed, blinds broken, holes punched in doors, wood trim destroyed by pet scratches, and water damage due to shower curtains not being used properly, and the list goes on and on. And now you want me to pay cash to renters who harm my property, where I'm left with no other option than to terminate their lease? I've never evicted anyone, but I certainly want the option to do so, and I don't want to pay for that freedom. I don't want to be.
Thank you, Paul. Your time has concluded. Next is Joanne Shatola, followed by Jessica Greenlee.
Mayor Vinnis and Council, thank you. I'm Joanne Shatola. I live in Ward 5. I own rentals in Wards 1, 5, 7, and 8. I believe the info identifying problems does not warrant action on the city's part. The Law Center has cited problems. That's what the Law Center sees, problems. That's like measuring the health of the population by the problems seen in the emergency department. Options are already available to tenants, many of them. But here's my favorite. Talk to me. Perhaps we can come to an agreement. It's free, and sometimes I feel like I may be being taken advantage of. But when I can ask questions and the tenant communicates, and that's key, there may be a reasonable solution. An eviction is my last solution, but sometimes it is warranted. Landlords can be taken advantage of by tenants, know this. Other options already available for tenants, the Eugene Rental Housing Fund, the Oregon Law Center, Springfield Eugene Tenant Association. The internet makes all this information easily available to tenants. Now, I want you to know that we're in the business of renting. We do not evict for no reason. We do not evict for money. It can't be done. If we do have to get our property back, there is a reason. We already, under certain circumstances, have to pay for the tenant to relocate. We already have it in place. For the landlords who have over 4 units, to pay the tenants 1 month rent for them to relocate. Yes, that's already. We landlords are not rich. We cannot afford, nor should we have to pay tenants moving costs, but we already have to. We either evict for cause, or if it's a landlord reason, we have to give the tenants 3 months notice. Yes, that's a quarter of a year to move and pay them. Apparently the tenant advocates want us to pay even more and to restrict us even more. That's certainly not fair and balanced. It's all pro-tenant. Also to consider the success of middle housing. I know council is aware this is to start 7-1. It is in play to increase housing. Landlords will expand and new landlords will be created. It's coming soon, so let's not hinder its success by repelling Eugene landlords. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Next is Jessica Greenlee, followed by Scott Zakarian. And it looks like there's a little bit of a delay. Oh, it looks like Jessica just is coming over. Jessica, please unmute.
Hi there. I apologize for the technical difficulties there. Happy Valentine's Day, Mayor and councilors. Thanks for listening to me. I also want to talk to you about the rental ordinances that are being proposed right now. I work for Affinity Property Management, and we manage communities across Eugene for independent clients, some of whom are in the process of adding additional housing to the community now. After hearing the discussion surrounding the rental housing restrictions at a recent city council meeting, I wanted to share our experience with the Portland policies that seem to be influencing Eugene's formation of a similar policy. The process of renting an apartment in Portland is now more difficult than the surrounding areas like Beaverton or Clackamas for both the renter and the landlord. And unfortunately, we do see a lot more applicants declining units because the rental process now takes too long. One of the reasons why this occurs is because of the first come, first serve policy, as well as a waiting period from the time of advertising and a different standard for ADA units. And I know that that waiting time doesn't sound like a lot, but there's administrative steps that then have to be implemented. First come, first serve is often handled in practice, but once it's then put into code, it's a much more extensive vetting process. We have to wait for potential applications that may have been submitted via mail versus dropping off at a Dropbox versus coming in digitally. And then those have to be reviewed to see which one would be the first application in that process. All of this is to say, essentially, that this hasn't actually changed the outcome, that we have not seen a change in application approval rates, nor those applications aligning with ADA units for those who may need those adaptability features. And I would hope that the City Council would take time to correspond with Portland to see if they have any data on this as well. I'm sure you'll find that it aligns with the information that we have been experiencing as a company. And that's across over 3,000 units in Portland. And I think it's important to look at that as an example, given that we have that available. Other information that I think should be considered is that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac both have rental screening criteria requirements in order to obtain loans for rental properties. The minimum credit score that's being proposed would not qualify properties under that criteria, nor would the rent-to-income ratio that is being proposed. And you'll notice that in the FAIR ordinance in Portland, there is a carve-out.
Thank you, Jessica. Your time has concluded. Next is Scott Zakarian, followed by Tim Morris.
Good evening. My name is Scott Zakarian. I live in Ward 7, and I'm also a property manager here in Eugene. At the last City Council meeting, I spoke about the need to keep regulations for rental properties consistent throughout Oregon, and how creating a patchwork quilt of city ordinances will ultimately end up hurting renters. Wanted to speak tonight about an unintended consequence that creating ordinances such as these will have on renters in Eugene. We primarily manage single-family homes here in the Eugene area, and those will be some of the rentals in the Eugene market greatest impacted by local ordinances. Last week, I went through our records to get an idea of how many of our properties were sold over the past few years and what the reasons for those sales were. What I found was that since SB 608 passed, 45 of the properties that we manage have been sold. Of those 45 properties, only 4 remained in the rental market following the sale. The other 41 homes were permanently removed from the rental market. The reasons cited by our property owners for selling varied widely. However, 19 indicated the reasons for selling was a concern about increasing regulations restricting their ability to find tenants that pay rent on time, take care of their property, and are good neighbors. That means that about a third of the rental properties that were sold while we were managing them since SB 608 passed were permanently removed from the rental market due to regulatory concerns and uncertainty of the property owners. The creation of a patchwork quilt set of ordinances throughout Oregon will make this much worse and will exacerbate the already serious problem of restricted access to housing that Eugene renters currently face. In order to minimize this problem, I'd ask you to please keep all regulations related to landlord-tenant law at the state level, not the city level. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Scott. Next is Tim Morris, followed by Kevin Cronin.
Good evening. Quick microphone check. Can you hear me? Fantastic. Mayor and city councilors, thank you for the opportunity to testify tonight. For the record, my name is Timothy Morris. I'm a resident of Ward 1. Happy Valentine's Day. I'm here to talk about my loves, housing policy and renter protections. I'm here to also talk about my experience as a member of the Renters Protection Committee. So this conversation of protections of renters is not new, and the actual protections of these, the actual protections in front of you are also not new. They come from the Housing Policy Board, and I'm going to talk about a little bit more about that a bit later. But I want to highlight that Councilor Zelenka a few meetings ago commented finding an email talking about this back in 2016. So this is not new information. The Renters Protection Committee is a subcommittee of the Housing Policy Board and has been talking about these renter protections, including of the ones in front of you, since 2019. The RPC has had 12 meetings in total, not including subcommittees, to work through these protections. And the Renters Protection Committee has had an equal number of landlords and tenants on it. We were chaired by Norton Campbell, a landlord who has since sadly passed away. The Renters Protection Committee came forward with these proposals and some additional changes that the landlords themselves advocated for, including that housing navigator position that's part of the slate of protections. The Renters Protection Committee also heard from Multifamily Northwest, a large landlord group in Portland who you heard from later or earlier tonight, and also the authors of the Fair Ordinance in Portland who also weighed in on the recommendations. Near the end of June of 2021, these protections were forwarded to the Housing Policy Board. The Housing Policy Board had 6 more meetings following that to talk about this and propose what is in front of you now. 18 public meetings, 18 public and official meetings have happened for your consideration, not including countless conversations outside of these meetings to talk about these protections. You already know the data. You know that more than 30% of renters in Eugene are paying more than 50% of their income on rent and rent alone. You know that these protections will help and support countless families in Eugene. And we know so many folks are suffering that something needs to be done. Many of the protections that are in front of you right now are already considered standard practice in Oregon and in other communities as well. And I encourage you to look past individual testimony from business owners who are attempting to prevent consumer protections and instead rely on your Housing Policy Board, who uses their expertise, experience, and passion to bring these to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. Next is Kevin Cronin, followed by Lynn Woodrich.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, Eugene City Council. My name is Kevin Cronin, and for the record, I'm a renter and I live in Ward 8. I'm here today to urge you to pass the full slate of tenant protections and displacement prevention assistance. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about no-cause eviction. In the 12 years I lived in Eugene, I've been no-cause evicted 3 separate times. As a working class line cook and community organizer, I was living paycheck to paycheck, and each time was devastating. In 2011, I ended up homeless and had to camp on a friend's porch until I could find a new place to live. I have a similar story for 2015 and 2016. No-cause evictions are a business decision made by a landlord. It is a business decision to renovate your property so you can charge more rent. It is a business decision to cash out in a hot real estate market. Leading up to 2019, no-cause evictions were so out of control and common that the legislature decided to act and ban them, except in 4 limited circumstances. Now, in 2022, we are again seeing an unprecedented uptick in no-cause eviction frequency despite these narrow limitations. No-cause evictions have a social cost. No-cause evictions are a direct pipeline to homelessness. They displace vulnerable families, and local service providers, police, and hospitals have to pick up that tab when resources are stretched thin. Displacement prevention assistance is an upstream solution to the social cost of no-cause evictions. It puts the cost of the business decision of displacement on the person who benefits the most from making that decision, and it protects their property rights to make that decision. A landlord could have 10,000 units in a market with displacement prevention assistance and never once have to pay it. With DPA, A renter will get first, last, and a deposit, which is typically enough to get them into their next unit. Please adopt these common sense consumer protections that are fair to renters and to landlords. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin. Next is Lynn Woodrich, followed by Dylan Plummer.
Hi, my name's Lynn Woodrich. I'm the Active Bethel Community Co-Chair living in Ward 6 with my 93-year-old dad, and I'm a homeowner in the Bethel portion of Ward 8. Thank you to Mayor Vinnis for attending our last meeting with Beyond Toxics regarding the J.H. Baxter cleanup effort. I sent all of you an invitation to our upcoming Zoom meeting with DEQ on Thursday at 6, where they will show the map of the possible dioxin contaminated area they'll be focusing on for cleanup. As you can imagine, the Bethel community is frightened of the soil results and also relieved that the polluter has shut down operations. We may need help in making Lark Park safe for children, as DEQ is unable to retest for dioxin levels at this time. I will be meeting with the park staff to see what they can do. The health overlay zone will be a critical piece in future planning for our area. Thanks to Randy Groves and Claire Syrett for work on this and the risk bond discussion. I'm reminding you of the importance of an area plan for Bethel. We've been neglected for 40 years, and the neighbors need to have a voice in the future of Bethel. I received good news lately from the city's urban forest folks, and thanks to all of you, they will be planting 132 trees along Highway 99 from Roosevelt Boulevard up to Barger Drive in the next few months. Thank you very much. In an upcoming budget, we would also like to have more median strips installed with trees along this Highway 99 strip to make it look more like a boulevard instead of an unsightly road. It will also help with our heat island effect problems. We appreciate your help with this. Please move up the Envision Eugene to help the Bethel area plan for a future where polluters don't poison our residents and developers don't take away the green spaces they enjoy. Bethel residents' voices need to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Next is Dylan Plummer, followed by Jim New.
Hello, can you all hear me? Great. Mayor Vinnis, City Councilors, and City Manager Maderi, thank you for this opportunity to testify. My name is Dylan Plummer. I'm a tenant in Ward 2, and I work as a senior campaign representative for the Sierra Club. I'm here on behalf of the thousands of Sierra Club members in Eugene to support the displacement prevention assistance blue, it's common sense to protect tenants and our climate too. Thanks again.
Thank you, Dylan. Next is Jim New, followed by Thomas Hiura.
It's a tough act to follow. Mayor, Council, and City Manager, my name is Jim New. I live in Ward 7. Several weeks ago, I had the opportunity to sit on the National Electrical Vehicle Charging Summit webinar hosted by Carla Peterman, the Executive Vice President of Pacific Gas and Electric. Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm spoke of a clean energy to power electric vehicles as part of the administration's Administration and Infrastructures Program. The most interesting discussion was the Department of Transportation and Department of Energy had signed a memorandum of understanding to work collaboratively to make accessible for low income and people of color affordable, accessible electric vehicles and EV charging. Their goal was to improve air quality by reducing the amount of internal combustion engines. According to Michael Berube of Department of Energy, who also spoke, he stated that states and cities need to collaborate with utilities and need to keep up for supply and demand, where use of solar would be used as a guideline, and we need to decarbonize buildings and autos by 2050. The City of Eugene has started this process, and I thank the mayor, council, and staff for initiating these efforts. Tomorrow, according to the eWeb website, the city and eWeb are having a joint initiatives agenda work session. I hope the city and eWeb work together to promote solar and EV charging in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reach the goals of the climate recovery ordinance. This would require a solar policy changes and downtown grid upgrades on eWeb's parts. But I am sure that working together, eWeb, LTD, and the city can be just as resourceful as DOE and the Department of Transportation, but on a local scale. Additionally, I read that J.H. Baxter stated they cannot afford remediation of the neighboring private properties they polluted for many years of operation. Fossil fuel risk bond requirements on polluting enterprises would be the funding mechanism to cover these costs, making the polluter pay instead of the public. I look forward to that work session getting on your schedule in the near future. And I thank Councilor Groves and Surratt for putting that out there. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Jim. Next is Thomas Hiura, followed by 350 Eugene.
Good evening, everybody. Thomas Hiura. I want to offer my ardent support for the rental protections proposed in the Protecting Eugene Renters and Transition Plan. As our society at large is hit hard by tragedies or economic vulnerabilities, it's renters who bear the disproportionate burden. It's renters of color, it's young folks, it's folks without educational privileges, it's hardworking parents and children. And so I think this package is full of sensible baseline protections. To point out a few things in particular, the banning of application fees and screening fees or setting a ceiling of $10 for them. These really add up for folks who are trying to get the hardest to get in somewhere. Also protecting renters with bad credit scores, which is often a function of not having amassed wealth and capital. And how dare they not have done that? When renters in Eugene thrive, the middle class is stronger. People are not only better equipped to find a job that's a good fit for them when they can get housed, but they're incentivized further toward work and self-development, and the whole community does better. So the plan also builds in some accountability for the withholding of the security deposit. I've heard too many tough stories of friends of mine being nickeled and dimed unfairly over the deposit or even being flat out lied to about it, which of course makes it harder to move into the next place. So I hope you pass the PERT plan. I also want to end with something that we'll all agree on. I think. Lynn Woodridge pointed out the 132 trees on Highway 99. I think that's really exciting just because back when I worked for a big hotel downtown, one of the things that I ran for city office on was trying to beautify Highway 99. I was shuttling folks to and from the airport often. And I always thought of that drive as Eugene's front door to the world. So those trees will be great for the positive impression that visitors get of Eugene, but more importantly, I think for the community members that frequent the area. And with Councilor Keating in mind, let's keep an eye out for doggy business bags too. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Next is 350 Eugene, followed by Scott Smith.
Greetings, Mayor and councilors. My name is Deborah McGee. I live in the county, but Eugene has been my home for 40 years. Belated Happy New Year, and now it's February, so time to plant your peas on Valentine's Day. And speaking of peas, right now we have 4-inch pea pods in our greenhouse. And if you haven't grown winter peas, the blossoms and the greenery are a soulful lift on these wintry days. As someone who has been seriously growing their own food for 25 years, I am really seeing the effects of the climate crisis. I see how it's affecting plants' ability to grow, flower, and ripen at the correct time. If it's too hot or too cold at the wrong time, it results in crop failure. This at a time when scientists tell us that high levels of greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere are actually making our food less nutritious. So a heartfelt thanks. You folks are on the path to getting closer to meeting the Climate Action Plan and Climate Recovery Ordinance. And we who understand the climate crisis support you, and we have your backs. So not to be redundant, but roses are red, violets are blue, and we love a city council that knows what to do. May love be in your lives every single day. In closing, I just want to mention that there is an online petition called, the title is The Housing and Climate Justice. And if you read it, it doesn't sound like housing or justice. It sounds like don't solve the homelessness crisis in my neighborhood. It's important that citizens not be misinformed. And I was sad to see that some of the names on that list that signed on were trusted people. So I think that change is hard. And if I had seen a thing that said housing and climate justice, I might have signed on too, but change is hard, we have to do it. I also urge you to support the tenant and displacement assistant protection. We're in this together, and harder times are coming. So we need to be supportive of the least powerful. Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you, Deborah. Next is Scott Smith, followed by Robin.
Hello. Hello, my name is Scott Smith. I live in Ward 5. Want to thank you for allowing me to speak, Mayor Venus and City Council. I'm opposed to the proposed changes to the rental housing rules in Eugene. Indicators say that the Portland Fair rules that Eugene's proposed rental rules are modeled on have resulted in an exit of small mom and pop landlords in the Portland area, or specifically Portland as a city. These folks are frequently hands-on, doing everything themselves with limited support, and they have a significant amount of personal risk exposure. Independent housing providers have already been forced to navigate significant rule changes at the state level recently, and there's new rules being proposed as we speak. New city level regulatory requirements will likely lead small housing providers to consider leaving the Eugene market, as is happening in Portland. And I would ask if that's a desirable outcome for Eugene. Has there been any analysis of renters in Eugene to determine what percentage prefer to rent from small independent operators who may decline as opposed to larger corporate landlords? Further, unless there's an overriding reason that makes these rules especially applicable to the rental environment of Eugene, this discussion belongs at the state level, where the majority of landlord-tenant regulations already exist. No one benefits from a patchwork quilt of different municipal rental housing regulations, and it is ultimately poor public policy. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Scott. Next is Robin, followed by Misty Frost. It looks like it's just taken a moment to, for Robin to connect. So it looks like she may have dropped off. So I'm going to go to Misty Frost, and I will come back to you, Robin. Misty, please unmute.
Hello, my name is Misty Frost, and I lived in Ward 7 for about 7 years. I'm a member of the River Road Community Organization, and I'm employed with the statewide COVID information hotline with 211 Info. My statements tonight do not represent the previous mentioned organizations or opinions or position. I would like to ask City Council to please support tenant protections at this time. Many Oregonians who I talk to on the COVID information hotline call for rental assistance. the despair and fear in their voices that I hear over the phone devastates me every day. And I would also like to share my personal story about being no cause evicted about 7 years ago. My lovely landlord, who I still call a friend, gave me a 30-day notice. Again, I didn't know my rights at that time. I was a full-time student, single parent, and taking care of my disabled veteran father. She gave me a 30-day notice because her son was moving back from California and needed a place to stay, to live. And there was no affordable housing for them. And so my friend, being a good mother, offered up the place where I was living. And so I found myself in a very scary and difficult situation. And staying up hours at night, looking on Craigslist over and over, trying to be the first one to apply for a place, and then $50 application fees. I mean, they just stacked up pretty quick, and it looked like we might be homeless if I kept having to pay these fees out on top of $5,000 to move in. First, last deposit. It was excruciating, and I'm really hoping that City Council will support tenant rights right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Misty. So I apologize. Robin has dropped off the call. So if I see them come back on, I will call on them last. So next is going to be phone ending in 327, followed by Rajiv Ravisankar. Phone ending in 327, please unmute.
Hi, I think I am muted. This is William Smith from Ward 1. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about wireless safety and broadband infrastructure, specifically fiber optic infrastructure. Previously, I shared why cities are making it happen, including innovation, economic development, social justice, and wireless safety. And I promise to address how they're making it happen. So here goes. Bottom line, each city makes it happen differently depending on their unique constellation of knowledge and resources. Chattanooga, for example, has a public utility similar to eWeb that has played a key role. And Austin, Texas, repurposed 4 trucks for quickly cutting 2-foot deep trenches where the flexible fiber optic wires are rolled out. And there are many more examples in the remarkable book Fiber by Harvard Law professor Susan Crawford, which I've told you about. So for the city of Eugene, I'm guessing there's a unique constellation of knowledge and resources that came together for the downtown fiber optic network to actually happen, and that can come together again for extending that network to all of Eugene safely and affordably. What's needed then are champions for the cause, for bringing people together, for discovering or rediscovering that knowledge and resources, and maybe more, for making it happen despite resistance from the telecom monopolies and their allies in all levels of government. In the cities that are actually making available fiber optic connections for all, champions are making the difference, according to Professor Crawford. And these champions are quite ordinary, like you and me, but they realize what's at stake and are willing to fight for it. Now, each of you has clearly been a champion for voters, or you wouldn't have been elected. And I believe each of you sometimes makes tough choices about what causes the champion. So I imagine you might be wondering, would safe and affordable fiber optic connections really be worth it to my voters if they knew what's really possible with these connections? And I'll address that question at a future forum. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Next is Rajiv Ravisankar, followed by phone ending in 116.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Hello, City Council. For the record, my name is Rajiv Ravishankar. I live in Ward 3, West University neighborhood. I'm a proud member and former president of the Graduate Teaching Fellows Federation, AFT Local 3544, which represents over 1,300 grad employees at the University of Oregon. I'm here to urge you to pass the full slate of tenant protections and displacement prevention assistance to protect renters like me. I've been a renter in Eugene since 2018 and belong to one of the most cost-burdened sections of our community. Many of our members are forced to spend 50 to 70% of our monthly incomes to cover rent. Our members, like other working class people, incur massive costs and challenges when moving here. For example, I had to shell out a few $1,000s for moving costs, including my first month's rent and security deposit at a time when I had no money coming in. When I moved out of the substandard unit, the property company deducted $350 from my deposit despite leaving the place clean, and I had to fight with support from Tenants' Right Hotline and legal aid to get the money back. In addition to facing substantial costs and application fees, some of our members experience additional burdens in finding housing due to educational debt, lack of credit history, and very low incomes. The constraints experienced when moving here put us under enormous pressure and can lead to severe consequences for some people. We've heard from UO graduate students about having to live in their cars and sleeping in their offices because of difficulty in finding housing. The proposed tenant protections and displacement prevention measures directly support graduate employees, students, staff, and faculty at UO, along with other working class people who desperately need a more even playing field to secure quality, affordable housing. The measures mark a step toward altering unsustainable power imbalance between tenants and landlords. With that said, I would like to reiterate my request to the council to support these essential renter protections as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rajiv. Next is phone ending in 116, followed by Ryan Moore. Phone ending in 116, please unmute.
Good evening. My name is David Solis. My wife and I own 2 homes, our Portland residence and this one single family rental in Eugene. We have 2 sons, and we were hoping the houses would be part of our legacy for them. Having listened to testimony from prior meetings and a little bit of this one, I guess I must admit that as a rental housing provider, I'm being labeled as an evil landlord. So I'm here this evening to sort of confess my sins, if you will, a little tongue in cheek. So here's some things that I've done, but will have to cease to do if you pass your quote unquote renter protections, and they will have the exact opposite effect that you want. My first confession is that I've always rented our house well below market rents. I have been what HUD and Harvard and others call a quote, naturally occurring affordable housing provider. We kept the rent low to attract great tenants and gladly traded the certainty and longevity over chasing the highest rent and its resulting high turnover. Second, I haven't raised our rent in 6 years. Many other landlords like me have not raised their rents either, even at the rate of inflation or at the maximum the law allows. Over those 6 years, my property taxes rose $700. Again, I didn't raise the rent. Several other landlords haven't done that either. We've had tenants who had dogs and asked for a 6-foot-high chain link fence. Thought it might benefit others in the future. We fenced the backyard for them for over $1,000 and did not raise the rent. In 2017, we needed new tenants. We screened our applicants using a tenant screening service. The family of 5 we selected was not the most economically qualified applicant. We selected them anyway. If your first come, first serve had been in place, we would have been prohibited from selecting them. Because my house was built in 1925, I had popcorn ceiling in the basement tested for asbestos. It tested positive. The new tenants had children who would play there, so I was afraid they'd dislodge the material. I could have encapsulated it, but then it still would have been there, and I wasn't comfortable with that. So I had it removed by a certified contractor for over $6,000. I did not raise the rent. For these actions, as an evil landlord, I apologize and beg your forgiveness. With my tongue out of my cheeks, please do not pass these renter protection proposals. If you do, you will increase my costs and risks, and I will be unable to be so accommodating to tenants in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next is Ryan Moore, followed by Jamie Cornett.
Hello, City Council. Sorry, I am bad at technology. Happy Monday and happy Valentine's Day. My name is Ryan Moore. I live in Ward 8. I wanted to just highlight some of the things we heard tonight and give an immediate response. And of course, CETA does send you monthly hotline reports. I sent the most recent one earlier today. We always eagerly welcome feedback and questions. So please feel free to respond back. And if anything isn't clear, we're happy to follow up with you individually. So on the question of data related to that, I'll start by saying, unlike the landlord advocates you've been hearing from today, renters do not have a paid lobbyist from Portland helping us organize. I wish we did. The reality is that we do not. Even myself, I do this work with this effort as a volunteer. Neither of my two day jobs allow me to do advocacy or lobbying work. We're just volunteers who think this is a great idea and much needed. That said, CETA's hotline is the first of its kind in our area and does illustrate some of the problems being felt. And I believe that data does show the need for each of these protections you're considering. Years of work have gone into them already. We know these are actual issues here. I wanted to touch on landlords do work really hard to get where they're at. There's no doubt about it. No one is here to disparage landlords or to discredit their livelihoods. But at the same time, we live in a different world today than we did 20 years ago. And I do not have an opportunity or similar to what existed 20 years ago. I'm moving too slowly. On the topic of the FAIR ordinance up in Portland, how people are saying it drove landlords out of business. FAIR was passed in 2019, less than a year before the pandemic touched down in Oregon. In fact, it went into effect less than a month after the first confirmed case. I think anyone saying FAIR is what drove landlords out of the market is at best not telling the full story here. So I just wanted to close by reiterating, we're here to help. If you have any follow-up questions, we're happy to do the research. You also have a very competent city staff who will be probably interfacing with Portland staff to give you even more data. There's a lot of data backing this stuff up. Anyway, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ryan. Next is Jamie Cornett, followed by our last speaker, phone ending in 804.
Hello, City Council. My name is Jamie Cornett, and I'm going to do my best to tell my story and testify. I'm a current renter and have been since I was 19 years old. I moved here from Biloxi, Mississippi, and because I left a domestic violence situation. I'm a domestic violence survivor, and I spent from half of 2018 until the beginning of 2019 homeless. I'm a current also Section 8 recipient, and my experience as a renter here in Eugene, Oregon, I'm also in the Cal Young area, which I think Counselor Ye is my counselor for my ward. And so currently right now, I am my lease is being terminated because I've asked my landlord, my property management company, for 12 months to fix habitability issues. And the last time I asked, their answer was, sorry, we're kicking you and your disabled children and you out on the streets, and you have 30 days to do so. And landlord, I understand from the property management skew, because I'm going to school to be a property manager, but also y'all got to understand from a tenant point of view is that y'all got bad apples in y'all's barrel. You know, that's what's making tenants rise up and speak up and begging for reparations to get this to stop, because I have been a victim of the company I'm renting for. I had to get legal aid to help get me in here because of source of income discrimination. I have been denied based on my credit. I mean, I don't think having my car repossessed 3 years ago has any bearing on if I'm going to pay rent or not, especially if I'm a Section 8 recipient. Your money is guaranteed. People should be based off of having, if they pay their rent on time every month, paying my car note versus having a place to live. I would rather have a roof over my kid's head. And if I have to lose my car, that's a hard choice. I'm a low income person. I live off of very little, and you have a good portion of the population here in Eugene and the state of Oregon and across.
Thank you, Jamie. Your time has concluded. And our last speaker is phone ending in 804.
Mayor and councilors, thank you for hearing my testimony tonight regarding renter protections. My name is Laurel Butman. My husband and I own a single family rental house in Ward 3, and we qualify as a mom and pop landlord, or what HUD and others call a naturally occurring affordable housing provider. Over the past 2 years, we've received no rental income from our renters, all but 4 months due to the rent moratorium, which may be extended for another 6 months. We have also continued 2 years of mortgage, insurance, and Eugene and County tax payments. Under the title of renter protections, you are considering shifting even more costs and more risks to us. If you adopt these renter protections, we are left with 2 choices. Neither protect renters, they will actually hurt them. First, we can raise rents to the market and legal maximum to cover the added costs and risk. This will permanently remove our rental from the affordable housing pool. That hurts renters. Second, we can sell. We heard someone say here at one meeting that they didn't care if people sold their rentals. Well, that may show a misunderstanding of the Eugene rental housing market, and I hope you do care. Both the census and your own housing reports document that single family rentals are about half of all Eugene rental housing units. And the 2019-2022 HUD housing report for Eugene shows about 3/4 of those are owned by small independents and mom and pops like us who act as a brake on rent increases. The HUD report says because small independent owners are such a large part of the rental market that they, quote, typically prioritize retaining tenants rather than responding to overall market conditions. Thus, rent increases at large rental properties are somewhat constrained as large property owners and managers are forced to compete with the mom and pop segment of the market, end quote. Finally, the city's own housing policy board has for 3 years documented that so-called renter protections hurt renters. The 2021 Housing Tools and Strategies Action Inventory repeats a finding also made in 2019. Quote, renter protections reduce the development of new housing supply in the long term, end quote. Why you are considering implementing the very protections your own housing policy board has found to have these negative impacts is puzzling to me, beyond puzzling. Please do not pass these renter protection proposals. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Laurel. And Mayor, that concludes our public forum for this evening.
Thank you very much. That was a really compelling testimony, really across the board. I really appreciate all the people who took the time to speak to us today. And this is a moment when counselors can weigh in. Counselor Evans, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I want to recognize Lynn Woodridge again for her leadership in the Active Bethel Citizens community organization and the things that are happening as far as dealing with the J.H. Baxter situation and Councilor Syrett and Councilor Groves moving forward with that while I was kind of out of action due to some health issues, but I'm back in the game again. The issues that we face in Bethel are indicative of how our community is going to move forward or not move forward. And we have not had the investment, the federal and state and local investment in Bethel for over 50 years. The last time that we had any kind of investment in Bethel was when State Street Park was built out of an urban renewal district in 1972. The last planning activities that we had, serious planning activities we had, took place in 1982. It's been far too long, and we need to start paying attention to those parts of our city that have been, and I'll just say it, have been neglected for years for a variety of different reasons. We are no longer felony flats. We never were in the first place. And we will continue to move Bethel forward. And I think that we have the right team of counselors, the mayor, and city manager and staff to do that. Now we need the investment. And it's going to take more than $20,000 for us to have the kind of area planning that we need.
Thank you. Councillor Keating and then Councillor Semple.
Thank you, Mayor. Because there are so many housing advocates all across the spectrum on tonight's call, I wanted to reiterate that on February 24th, the City of Eugene will host the first of 2 virtual education opportunities that promote housing affordability, availability, and diversity of type of housing in our community, but providing an introduction to the basics of small-scale housing development. So I hope folks will tune in and promote accordingly the conversation on February 24th. Back in 2013, 2014, 2015, it's all kind of a blur at this point, but I was working for Environment Oregon, raising money and raising awareness around the ban of single-use plastic bags. I wish Councillor Zelenka were well enough tonight to be on tonight's call, because he led the charge, and I thank him for doing so. And council ultimately, and several of you on this call were there at the time, stood with Tillamook and Corvallis to be among the first municipalities in the state to ban single-use plastic bags. A patchwork, if you will, before the state took action. Since I alluded to bags and doggy business at the top of tonight's meeting, I'm using this bag analogy to highlight that sometimes it's the municipality's responsibility, and certainly within our legal wheelhouse to do so, to tackle an issue before state government takes hold of it and implements it at a statewide level. In regards to tenants' rights, renters' rights, we have that same responsibility. So I look forward to a collaborative conversation and try and find creative ways to provide incentives, provide carrots, say thank you for the vast amount of good landlords out there who are doing the right thing, who have a great relationship, as I've had with the many landlords I've had. Over the years, there's only been one bad apple among the bunch. But there are mutual interests intertwined. And so if we as a council can get creative to find some ways to say thank you to those who are doing the right thing by not raising the rents and helping keep folks with a roof over their head for years at a time, that's a win. But also what's in front of us right now in regards to tenants' rights and renters' rights are not radical. They are data-driven. And no, it's not a patchwork. It's the right thing to do before statewide implementation considerations take effect. So, or those conversations even begin to, well, collect my thoughts, Mayor. I applaud everyone who came to testify. I continue to be consistent in my enthusiasm for the tenants' rights and renters' rights protections in front of us. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Semple, and then Councillor Syret.
Thank you, and a very big thank you to everyone who came and spoke to us tonight. I hear your passion on both sides, and I appreciate you bringing that to us in articulate ways. I do support the renter protections, and I am always ready and willing to listen to opposing views, so I am listening, and I appreciate you talking. And I totally agree. It's time for us to support Bethel. They've been getting that end of the stick for way too long. And glad to do that. And thank you, William Smith, for your continued pursuit and support of fiber. I think it would be great if we had fiber all over town. So thanks for coming. And really, thank you to everyone, even if you think that any of us don't agree with you. I need to hear from all of you, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cyrette, and then Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I want to thank everyone who came, who logged on to provide public comment. Really appreciate it. It's really important. Just a few thoughts about different things. So appreciate Councillor Evans' passionate call for investment in Bethel. However, I do want to remember that we did invest several $millions in Golden Garden Park. So that was an important investment. Obviously, one project, needing to be shored up by many, many others. As far as the concern that J.H. Baxter has said they can't pay for the cleanup, of course they said that. Who is surprised by them saying they can't pay for it? DEQ, in that same memo said, so we know this is the deal. This always happens. We will figure out how to pay for it. And then they will pursue a legal claim against J.H. Baxter to make them repay whatever costs come onto the taxpayer. So that's not a done deal in terms of who's paying for that. I also want to appreciate William Smith's testimony on fiber. I really want our broadband work that we've talked about extending throughout the city to be based on the physical expansion of our downtown fiber network. That is my vision when I say, let's expand beyond downtown, not necessarily broadband that's accomplished in other ways. So I really like that you shared the specific example of the city of Austin repurposing equipment to dig trenches and lay fiber. That's great. And then I don't normally call out individual folks in testimony, but I really wanted to commend Thomas, and Thomas, I'll probably not pronounce your last name correctly, but Huera. Thomas, I think when you were running for mayor, you gave us testimony a lot of times that I found a little difficult to absorb. Tonight, your testimony was cogent, on point, articulate. It wouldn't have mattered to me what topic you were speaking to. Your delivery was just excellent. And so I apologize for the personal call out of someone who gave public comment. I don't normally do that, but I was very impressed and wanted to comment on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark and then Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. I too want to thank everyone who came and spoke tonight. Like Councillor Semple, I appreciate hearing all the points of view that decide to come. Even if they're different than mine, it helps me understand what people are passionate about. And that's important. I'm left with a little cognitive dissonance from a lot of the testimony around renter protections. We initially passed rental housing code in 2005, 17 years ago. And we've made a couple of additions to it over time. And manager, please correct me. I think we have a staff of 4 now. Am I right?
We don't have, so I guess I would say with the renter protections, we don't have like full FTEs. We have a number of people that do work on that we apportion it to. So it could be 4, but I think it's less than that.
Because I remember when we had, income from charging all the landlords of $10 a door, we had income in the 300,000 range above and beyond what we had spent in the previous years. And that was one of the reasons we added a 4th person, at least the 4th FTE in my recollection. And that's why I may not be right about that. But here's my thing. I heard at least 3 people tonight testify, renters. And as having been one until less than a year ago for a long time, I understand their pain. I felt it. When I moved out of my place, I didn't get all my money back that I thought I was due. You know, I mean, I understand the burdens of that and the fears of that. But I heard 3 folks tonight talk about things that are already violations of our rental housing code. And including the last gal that moved here from Mississippi. And so what's the purpose of our spending that money if I know that it's not representative of everybody when you hear testimony in a case like this, but that was enough of them that it seems to me the structure or the manner in which we're providing service or the something isn't structured properly with the way we currently have the rental housing code. If people can talk about violations like that and we're not already on it to correct the situation. I thought the point of having the code was to help landlords with corrections that keep them inside the bounds of the law. And it sounds like if there are so many bad actors, why aren't we doing something different than we're doing already? Sarah, I don't want to pick on you, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Like your Valentine's night pick?
I love you.
Just
I do.
kidding.
I promise.
Yeah, no, I don't feel that way at all. There's been a lot of questions over the years about the renter protection program. And we have definitely focused that a lot tighter. And I think I could happily give you a more detailed update on where the funds are going, where the revenue is coming from.
Sure.
It can be really complicated because not always, tenants they don't always want to report what's happening because of the fear of getting an eviction. So without going deep into the details of each individual person that called, it's hard to say why this did or didn't get resolved in the way that you're suggesting.
The last gal mentioned 12 times that she had complained and worked with, I think, some of the other folks like CETA. How come we can look into that. At that point we didn't spring into action?
As I said, I have to look in to see what we did and didn't do.
I hate to put you on the spot like that. I do love you.
Okay.
You understand my point, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. And I too want to lend my voice to thanking everyone who testified tonight. And something, I don't know if my colleagues feel the same way as I do about this, but I think as a group, this was one of the most civil and thoughtful group of testimonies I think I've heard since I've been on council. And I mean, everyone was very civil. I thought people represented their positions well and calmly, and it was one of the more enjoyable public forums that I've sat through. And so I thank you for that. I also want to lend my voice in support of Bethel. Thank you, Councilor Evans, for raising that issue. I do also want to point out, though, that we just did do a wonderful pool renovation out there at the Echo Hollow pool. So there has been some money spent in Bethel, but I do strongly support a planning process that brings the Bethel area up to the current times. And I also, in my ward, which includes part of Bethel, but even southwest Eugene has probably had less attention than other parts of the city. So I think it's good that we do look west sometimes. Those are some important gateways to our community, and it's important to the people that live in these areas as well. So just to kind of put a pin in that, and I look forward to more discussions as we move forward on the whole rental protection issues and taking everything we've been hearing and learning into account as we make some very important decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, Councilor Evans, you want a second round here?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I appreciate Councilor Syrett and Councilor Groves pointing out the improvements that we have had recently in Bethel, particularly with the Echo Hollow pool, the changes that we have had and development we've had in terms of our road bond that has supported the reconstruction of a number of streets as well as the Golden Gardens project. But when we look at some of the projects that we have on the table, like Golden Gardens for the sports park, we're not going to realize that investment for another 10 or 12 years. My point in beating this drum is that we have invested quite a bit of resources, time, energy, and staff time in other areas of the city that I'm not trying to pit one area against the other, but you know, I'll just be very candid with you. My folks need some help, and we need to be able to make sure that a rising tide lifts all boats, not just some.
Thank you. Councilor Ye.
Yeah, thank you. So, Councilor Evans, I really appreciate you continuing to beat the drum, but beating the drum probably isn't just enough yet. So I'm wondering if we can't get an update on what our current plan is for the Bethel. I know it's not first in line right now, so maybe we can get updated on that, just even if it's just an email, so we can be reminded about what the current situation is, should we not change anything. Because it seems like there's a lot of consensus on council that this is an important issue. It's an important time for this community, and seems like a real clear equity issue, something that we've committed to putting as a priority and when we're making decisions. So if something needs to change, I think the first step is what's the current plan so we can decide what we want to do. Because I think Councilor Evans and other people are right. This community needs our support, and just talking isn't enough. We need to, if we're going to say that, we need to step up and do something. So let's get the whole band going, not just the drums.
Nicely put. City Manager, do you want to speak to any number of things?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I always wanted to play the drums. Maybe I will still someday. So I wanted to just mention something because it's going to be in your packet later this week, and I didn't want you to get it and be like, oh, that's weird. Why didn't she say it on Monday? But one of the things that we're going to be proposing and that we've been looking at that's related directly to Bethel and Golden Garden. So it's not this entire conversation that we're having. And I can happily send an update on where we're at with neighborhood plans. But we have some bond funds remaining in the 2006 Parks and Rec bond that were set aside for the West Eugene Wetlands Education Center, which is just, we'll give you more history about this, but one of the possible allocations and ways we could actually reinvest that money is in Golden Gardens. And so we've been exploring that and are looking at using those funds to invest in Golden Gardens and move that along a little bit faster. So there's actually a packet coming in your council this week with more details about it, why it could be a recommendation, and asking you if you have questions to reach out to us. So I just wanted to, I didn't want you to see that and be like, she didn't say anything about that. And so we'll look at getting you an update on the rest. Thank you.
That's great. Oh, Councilor Clark, another comment?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I just wanted to say, since well before the horrible situation that created the desire for Golden Gardens in the first place, with that young man's death, and that was horrible. We have been planning to complete Stryker Field in North Eugene, and recently we've discovered that we don't have quite enough money to finish that all the way. So I hope that option will be included as well with any funds that we've discovered we don't have allocated in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I speak to that, Mayor?
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
I anticipated you would have that question, and so yeah. So the 2006 bond measure has very specific requirements, legal requirements, restrictions that would not allow that to be used towards Stryker Field, but it is going to be, I'll just spoiler alert, part of my budget proposal this year, when you get the budget proposal, will be to allocate some dollars from ARPA to Stryker and some of the other parks that we've seen an inability to complete completely because of COVID and rising prices and inflation. So you'll see some of that in the budget. It won't be part of the Golden Gardens bond proposal.
Well, and this is why you're such an outstanding city manager, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. This has really been such a constructive evening, and I just want to speak to a couple of things, just broadly supporting what my colleagues have said, which is that when we look at the renter protections, we are trying to find a fair and balanced pathway here to make sure that people are not unfairly burdened with excessive charges, unfair charges, and are not vulnerable to losing their housing. So it's, you put in regulations because of the people who don't follow the existing rules. And the hope is that those are reasonable enough that they don't undermine the good work that is happening in the community. So that's the balancing act council faces. And then secondly, I'm very happy to hear this conversation about Bethel. We know there are just chronic health challenges for people living there because of air quality, because of Baxter, but other industries as well. It's really thrilling to know that many all those new trees are going in on Highway 99. And, we have focused on safe routes to schools and other pieces, but it is really time to give it a look. I agree with everyone. This is an equity question and also, I think, a health emergency question, and aligns with both our climate and our housing goals. So I look forward to having more conversations about that. And also, yes, thank you, William Smith, for continuing to come back and prompt us and do the homework and provide resources on fiber. And Councilor Evans, one more comment. I'll turn it over to you.
Actually, this is a question, Mayor, for staff. What kind of conversations have we had with Union Pacific about the loads that they're carrying through our community and the accidents and derailments that are not always reported? That is another thing health-wise that affects us demonstrably. And, I know that, the railroads were given more power than God himself during the Civil War, but they do have a responsibility to the communities that they operate in, and particularly our community. And I don't know what kind of conversations and discussions we're having as a city with them, but I do think that we do need to have some conversations about the kinds of things that they are carrying through our community and what the effects are when they do have accidents and they're not doing the cleanup that they needs to be done. And we have a fire unit, which Councilor Groves knows, over by Valley River, that deals with a lot of these things that happen with our railroad partners, but it may not be enough. And we really need to be able to hold our railroads accountable, our freight railroads accountable for the things that they are carrying that are toxic in our community.
Sure thing. That, is definitely brought up as part of that recent work session poll around risk bonds. I'll have to follow up and see what our most recent communications have been with Union Pacific, so I couldn't answer that specifically tonight.
Okay, Councilor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. Just quickly in response to what Councilor Evans was saying, I just want to make sure we're clear. It's not always derailments. It's valving problems. It's chemical reactions where you have boilovers. It's basically unintended accidental releases. That's the problem. Sometimes it's mechanical damage to the vessel or the plumbing. It's not always a derailment. It's much less than that can cause the releases, and those can be airborne or go into the ground, depending on the product, and sometimes it's both. So it's a whole suite of challenges that need to be managed. Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation. And I think with that, we are finished with all comments. Thank you, everyone, for participating. And with that, we are adjourned. Have a good night.